I love video games. They are by far my favorite art form.
They're the culmination of a studio's intense dedication to every detail. From story, animation, gameplay, soundtrack, art direction, and more, it's a miracle we can even play these things. But yet, we often fail to start or finish games, with the infamous concept of a backlog affecting all gamers in some form. And with the amount of games that are released today, it begs the question of which ones you give your attention to. But beyond that, the question of when to move on from a game is also just as important. Now, we all have our comfort titles, but branching out and finding new games is just as important. So what happens when you don't enjoy a game? Or what about when something new comes out that everyone's talking about? Some people might feel bad about quitting a game, while others see it as an entirely personal choice.
So today we're going to explore why people abandon games, and see whether those reasons have any validity, or if continuing to understand what the game truly has to offer is the better option. It's your Koi here and welcome to the pond, because we're diving deep.
Also, let me know in the comments which games you've abandoned and why, and also if you agree with any of my points in the videos. And don't forget to subscribe. Games are constantly improving. I mean, just look at Zelda's evolution over the past years. In the early 2000s, games came on discs and consoles were huge and bulky, but now they can fit in a backpack. But we often fail to acknowledge what happens when this change occurs. Often, next-gen release titles have to make themselves backwards compatible in order to still make profit and have widespread market availability. But often games that are built for new hardware can't translate the intended experience to previous generations without having to make significant compromises that often leads their releases to being buggy or stripped down versions of the original. So let's take a look at some examples. To begin, in recent years, there's been rampant complaints about optimization in video games. I mean, more and more titles are being released in unplayable states, or require such expensive hardware that they become inaccessible to the average player.
And yet it still cost me an arm.
Take, for example, the infamous Crysis, which was renowned for killing PCs all across the globe. This was the result of them attempting to future-proof the game by using complex physics, volumetric lighting, and high polygon models, which far exceeded the capabilities of hardware available at the time. All of this made it nearly impossible for the average gamer to play it. But that's ancient history at this point. If you want a more recent example, Cyberpunk 2077 was so broken upon release that Sony actually had to go out and give refunds back to players. And that's not a common thing for companies to do, so that just goes to show how bad of a state this thing was released in. And this was one of the first times I'd ever seen them do something like this. Now, while this was the result of many factors, the most prevalent one was the fact that the game was just not built for the previous generation. It was too ambitious and the systems were too complex to run efficiently on consoles, or even on some PCs. And this extends to even games like City Skylines 2, which was so poorly optimized that it couldn't even break 30 frames per second with 4090s. Which is just absurd. And also, don't get me started with Starfield. It was equally buggy, with the usual crashes and physics issues, alongside the NPCs just being completely broken. All of this indicating that the game was simply not ready. And yet, Todd still had the gall to say,
"So, you may need to upgrade your PC for this game."
Well, that was a bad investment.
But the most atrocious release we can't forget about is the freaks over at Nintendo with the Pokemon game Scarlet Violet, which was just a complete shit show for optimization. Like, you're telling me someone at Game Freak looked this over and genuinely approved it? Despite that, these games mostly work now, or at least work better on their intended platforms, so that makes them more bearable. That is, when you're getting the full package. But what about when games are degraded to adjust to other platforms? Games like Alien Isolation, Black Ops 3, and Dragon's Dogma 2 were all games that were cross-gen platforms, but they had significantly suffered as a result. Alien Isolation graphically struggled on the PS3 and had immensely long loading times, which could sometimes screw you over in gameplay. In Call of Duty, their campaign wasn't even included, which meant you literally didn't even get all the content despite paying the same price.
So screw these things. I just wanted the box.
And Dragon's Dogma 2, similarly to Cyberpunk, was just too ambitious to be properly supported on PS4. Yet while these are objectively inferior versions, they are still playable. While sure these versions might be worse, they still can be fun to play if you're in the mood. So is it really fair to give up on a game? Not always.
But let's see when it's worth your time.
The Metro franchise shines with its unique approach to the apocalypse, merging both classic post-apocalyptic ideas with rich Slavic folklore, alongside its unforgiving gameplay makes it a truly unique set of games. In the most recent release, Metro Exodus is the best in my opinion, bringing the best parts of all the previous games to make an absolutely underrated masterpiece. There was just one issue, however.
This game ran like trash!
Often having long load times, and in my case at least, having straight up broken puzzles made it absolutely terrible to play. Yet I decided to persist through the unrendered buildings and my PS4 nearly blowing up, and was rewarded with refined gunplay and an immersive narrative. And for that reason, I'm glad I decided to play it despite its flaws. And similarly, online, there's a large sentiment that even others have supported that playing cross-gen games, while inferior, are still completely viable methods of gaming. So to conclude this section, it's okay to abandon a game due to technical issues.
If it's so broken where you're struggling to run the game properly, you shouldn't feel sympathy for the developers and should be entitled back to your money.
Yet, if done correctly, it is still completely rewarding and worth it to play the inferior versions of these games if it's all you have available.
So assuming you're actually able to get the game to run, what happens when you actually have to play the game next?
Okay, so assuming you're actually able to get the game to run, the next big hurdle you have to experience is actually playing the game yourself, deciding if it's fun or entertaining enough to merit your time investment into it. And as you can imagine, this is a major point of contention for many gamers, as games are often abandoned due to their gameplay being too obtuse, extreme, or just plainly boring to bother persisting through. To begin, one of the most common complaints / worries when starting a game is the difficulty. A topic which I've already discussed, but some games ward off players for being too hard. Games like Dark Souls, Darkest Dungeon, and Hollow Knight just to name a few. And I've played all these games to credits,
So it's safe to say, I'm an authority.
and in my opinion, these games aren't too hard, rather they're just highly demanding, requiring your full attention and ability to succeed. But obviously, this experience isn't going to resonate with everyone, and some people can't find it within themselves to play something this intense, which causes them to abandon the game. And listen, I'm not saying I'm holier than now. I too have done this with games like Nioh 2, which I just could not find it within myself to play. However, it's really important to note that this is a pretty small amount of games, as most modern releases include some form of modifier, so it's not the most prevalent issue when it comes to gameplay. Another common gameplay issue is purely technical. Games that have either complicated or really annoying mechanics can be a huge deterrent. To exemplify this, let's talk about New Vegas and Red Dead Redemption 2. Fallout New Vegas is praised for its story and deep RPG mechanics, but those specific aspects made it super unappealing for me personally. While I never struggled to know what I had to do or where to go, I found myself completely overwhelmed by the amount of content in the game. Simultaneously, I found the gameplay to be extremely dated and unapproachable. Despite this, I decided to put on my big boy pants and completed the game, but it left me with more of a sour taste in my mouth rather than if I had just stopped halfway through. But in contrast to that, some people complain about the drawn out and intricate animations and mechanics of Red Dead Redemption 2 that are meant to immerse you into the game. The most common complaint about this game is that it's too slow, but personally I didn't mind that. I, and a lot of others, were able to appreciate the attention to detail Rockstar put into it, which helps enrich the world and adds to the sense of depth and wonder you experience while playing it. So this just shows how much gameplay can affect your experience of a game, because while I can still understand and praise what New Vegas did, I probably won't replay it, and yet the same can be said for others in Red Dead Redemption 2. If we want to even expand this idea to games as a whole, look to puzzles or mystery games like Baba Is You, Detroit Become Human, and The Outer Wilds. These games all require immense attention and focus from the player. Baba Is You, for example, is a puzzle game, which naturally means you have to think a lot while playing it, especially with its out-of-the-box, rule-changing setups that really force you to critically think about everything you're doing. In addition to this, Detroit Become Human is a choice-driven story game, which demands you live with your consequences. And The Outer Wilds requires that you think abstractly about puzzles and draw on your information to make new conclusions and discoveries about the world as a whole. Because all these games are so emotionally or intellectually stimulating and demanding, these can be off-putting as most people just want to relax and not think when they're playing games. Now obviously there still exists a large group that finds this stimulation to be incredibly rewarding, which only further demonstrates how volatile our emotions are regarding games and how they influence how we play. And if you want to get more into the psychology, I'd recommend these channels to check out after the video. So when it comes to gameplay, while it may offer challenges to you individually as a player, these are often the results of a developer's vision. And with that, I think it's not a valid reason to abandon a game. When done correctly, the systems work together to form an experience that reflects the intended experience, or can even serve as an extension of the story, weaving narrative and gameplay simultaneously together, combining to make an unforgettably rewarding experience. Now that we've gone beyond simply playing a game, one of the last major hurdles is the game's story. Now the reason I put this last is because some games, the stories are less prevalent if present whatsoever. Titles like Post Void, Ultra Kill, or Noida have lore embedded into them, but it's more supplementary and won't affect your experience of the game. What the fuck? Oh my god, excuse me. So for this section, I'll focus on story-heavy games. To show how important stories are, some stories are so good that people stick with a game just to experience them, like the previously mentioned Red Dead Redemption 2, Kane and Lynch, or both Hellblades, which still manage to engage players despite some questionable design choices.
This game is ugly.
With that said, I want to start with one of the most controversial games in recent memory, Death Stranding. Now this game is completely divisive, but I love it. The game doesn't hold your hand with its story. You're just thrown into it and expected to pick up and accept everything that's going on. Like Cartman, for example, who lives and dies every 21 minutes. The fact that you need to use a baby to spot BTs. Or that you can use your piss as a literal weapon. Something I've been a proud advocate of for a long time. And all the other crazy Kojima shenanigans. This level of absurdity off-puts so many, but it's one of the reasons I love the game. Most AAA titles rarely take on absurdist ideas and concepts with this level of boldness, and that's why I personally think it's worth even just experiencing. The world is full of such rich lore that rewards you the more you come to understand it. It helps transform the world of the game, from being one that you simply experience to being one that you feel that you actually inhabit, as you have to play along with its various rules, which cements it as a generational figure.
Now, despite my praise for Death Stranding's rich lore, in my experience, this can also hamper a game. And now this might be a little controversial, but my playthrough of The Witcher 3 demonstrates that perfectly.
Not to be a contrarian, but I love the combat and RPG mechanics of The Witcher. Things like the power scaling and your different runic abilities really managed to scratch an itch I didn't even know I had. And despite me sucking at Gwent, I actually never got bored of engaging with the world in a more gamey manner. However, I wasn't compelled with the story. Geralt's quest to find Ciri felt misguided and sometimes unimportant. The side quest, while offering differing choices, also kind of felt menial and really struggled to interest me. And I think my friend put it best when he said, if you're not interested in the world, you won't love the game. And I think that was pretty true for me, and one reason I decided to stop playing the game, despite having so much fun. Now, so far, I've shown how extensive lore can both enhance and sometimes hinder a game, yet I believe that Disco Elysium is one of the only games that strikes a perfect middle ground between the two. And this is because it's a story that you help create yourself. Through your choices, you build your character and can morph him into anything. I mean, you can morph him into a racist communist, socialist drug addict, or even a sharpshooter brute. The narrative revolves around the player making the narrative, and in my opinion, this helps solve many of the issues players have with narrative-heavy games. By involving the player in creating the story, while still allowing for failure with its investigative structure, it creates for a far more engaging experience. Not to mention its absolutely fantastical writing and voice work.
She's being evasive. She knows something.
To conclude this section, if a story is integral to the experience of a game, it can have a massive effect on how committed you are to actually finishing the game. Because a bad story can make a great game unplayable and vice versa. And that shows why it's such a common cause for people to abandon games.
Give the dog a name. Peanut or Done?
Now this last reason doesn't really fall into any of the previous sections because it's actually reflective of the gamers themselves. Now what do I mean by that?
Stupid. They're not.
Okay, I'm kind of joking, but seriously.
Some people can't finish games because they straight up don't know what to do. Now the most common example of this I can think of is kids. I think it's a universal experience that all of us have played games but never finished because we were all just dumb as hell. I mean, it took me like 3 years to beat Portal 2 because I got stuck in a chamber and just couldn't figure it out, so I dropped the game until I got smarter.
And this is super embarrassing.
When I played Lego Batman, I never got past the first few levels because I was like, what, 7? Now this is only valid if you're young enough to have your parents still do your homework. After that, no. So now we've explored the most common reasons that people quit games, and now it's time to finally answer the question if any of these are reasonable causes to do so. And in my opinion,
No.
yes. Ultimately, it's up to you as a gamer to decide if something's worth your money and attention. But what I've observed is that all of these are valid reasons to abandon a game. If you tried to run Cyberpunk, or if you tried to enjoy Dark Souls, but it's ultimately not for you, then that's okay. But not giving something a chance and immediately slandering it is just plainly ignorant. Because if you never push yourself out of your comfort zone, you'll never know if you were able to discover one of your favorite games.
So thanks for stopping by the pond. It's Yokoi here, and I'm out.
Peep this exclusive Japanese game right here. This exclusive. Merry Christmas, the game. You see that?